Okay, let's get started. So, welcome tonight, everybody. My name is Rafi Schulman, and I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors. It's great to have you here tonight. I just want to take a moment and thank the other speakers who have joined me tonight: Dan Cohen, Lucy Fisher, um, Shachar Abraham, and Tamar Cohen. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the insight and the tips and advice that you have to share with everyone that has joined us tonight. We have over 120 people who have registered for this webinar, and I'm always so amazed and inspired by the large number of people who register and attend our webinars, but especially tonight. You know, we're all going through a tough time here in Israel, of course, and outside of Israel. And I think it's really amazing. It's really just so great to see so many people who are saying, you know what, in spite of everything that is going on in the world, and in spite of what's going on in Israel, it hasn't impacted your resolve. It hasn't impacted your decision to either make Aliyah now or to at least look into it. And I really want to encourage you to see it through. I think that for those of you who do get to Israel sooner than later, you'll look back and you'll feel that this is one of the best decisions that you could have made. And so I want to congratulate you. I want to commend you on being here with us tonight, on showing interest, on letting people know that Israel is our homeland and this is where you want to be. So thanks, and we really look forward to providing you with some really good information and answering your questions. Before we get started, just a few quick things. First of all, we are recording the webinar. So if you've come late or if you have to leave early, don't worry about it. We'll send out an email within the next day or two with a link to the recording so you can watch it at your own convenience. And also feel free to share it. If there's anybody else that you know who was thinking about making Aliyah and weren't able to attend, feel free to send it to them as well. We will have my contact information at the end as well. So if you have any questions, and I really encourage you to reach out to me, and our team will also reach out to everyone who has registered, because we can't get into everyone's situation in tonight's webinar, and everybody has their own situation, their own circumstances, their own questions and concerns and their goals. And so we wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with each of you to really understand that and to give you some practical advice and some good advice that will help you in your planning. The other thing is that we're going to do a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to put your questions in the chat, and then when we get to the end of the webinar, we will go through and we will talk about, we'll answer as many questions as we can. Okay, so I just want to talk very briefly about Olim Advisors, who we are and why we hold these webinars. And so if we go back to 2016, which is when we started Olim Advisors, we had two goals in mind. The first goal was to talk to as many people as possible from around the world and help them go through this process. A lot of people have had the desire, have had the dream of making Aliyah for many years, but they don't know how to go about it. Maybe they don't know how to choose a community, or maybe they don't know how to find schools, or maybe they don't know how to deal with practical things like buying a car and dealing with banks and dealing with bureaucracy. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to help people plan out their Aliyah beforehand. So all these big decisions that one has to make, we want to talk to people, give them some advice, give them some practical tips, and actually help them plan out the Aliyah. And then once they get here, that's really the second part of what we're trying to accomplish here. And what we do is support people and guide them through the acclimation process. So whether it's dealing with bureaucracy at the beginning, or whether it's dealing with ongoing questions from the little emails that you get and the questions that you get and the challenges that you have to deal with, to the big issues like buying a home in Israel and healthcare and so on and so forth. And so I just want to let you know that we're here to help. We're here to help you beforehand. We're here to help you during, and we're here to help you after. And so I really want to encourage you to reach out to us, whether you're making Aliyah in the next few months, maybe down the road, or maybe you haven't even decided that you want to make Aliyah, but it's just a thought in your mind and you want to talk to somebody. We're here for you. Okay. So let's quickly go over the agenda just so that we know the main topics that we want to talk about. So we're going to start out with the group here that has joined us tonight, and you're going to hear from them what life is like in Israel during these challenging times. You know, I think that's very important that people realize what we're dealing with now and not just based on what you're seeing on TV. The next topic is going to be talking about why reasons talking about reasons why people should think about making Aliyah now. Now, we're not going to suggest that you drop everything and you get on the next flight, but there are definitely things that you should keep in mind and reasons why we think now is a good time for you to start thinking about it. Then we're going to turn it back over to our Olim, and they're going to share with you their Aliyah experiences. They're going to talk to you about what they had to go through, and then they're going to give you tips and advice that you can keep in mind as you think about your Aliyah plans. Then we'll talk about things that you need to do if you're thinking about making Aliyah in the next 1 to 2 years. There's specific things that you need to do, specific steps you need to take, and we'll talk about that. And then we'll end up the webinar with just some free resources that we offer, as well as the Q&A session. All right, so let's start with the first topic. And Dan, I'll hand it over to you. If you can start talking about life, if you can just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and where you live, and then talk about what life is like during these challenges, these challenging weeks that we've had to deal with.
Absolutely. So first of all, hi, everybody. My name is Dan Cohen. I am a very satisfied Olim Advisors client from the summer of 2017. I'm not sure if folks can see me, Rafi. Can you see me okay?
Yeah, I can see you fine.
I can't see myself on the screen. Okay.
I can see you fine.
Fantastic. So I wanted to kind of just share a couple of ideas about life in Israel right now. The first is, this is a very micro and macro time. At the micro level, I have a daughter who's serving in the army. She is having her experience of this moment. We are learning about what's happening through her. At the macro level, the entire country has come together in a way that, if you were following the news over the last year, you might have thought this country could never kind of rejoin as an the way it has. And I think that on a personal level, life in Israel during the war, for me, what's been so spectacular is watching the country rejoin, reemerge, re-become a unified in the face of the external challenges. As far as day-to-day life, what I'll share is it's both the same and entirely different. The reasons it's the same are the supermarkets are open, the gas stations are open, many people go to their jobs every day. I work at home, so I go to my job every day. But at the same time, there is a culture of chesed that has come out that is always sort of under the surface in Israel. The level of chesed that's frankly required at this moment, where 100,000 people have been moved out of the south and out of the north. You have chesed for 250,000 miluim who are serving. The level of just a community, and it's just my community, Renana, but I know it's happening everywhere else. The way people are coming together and using their skills and resources to serve others, to be a part of that in this moment is extraordinary. And I'll stop there.
Great, thank you so much. Lucy, you're up.
Okay, well, I came to Israel by myself with my dog, which was easy in that respect 1.5 years ago. And the biggest challenge for me was the government offices. For every step in the United States I had to do, you have like 5 extra steps here. And then 6 months after I came here was all the demonstrations to get the government, and you felt the whole country was splitting apart. And I began to question, why am I here? And then we had the war break out. And like Dan said, everybody pulled together. I don't hear one voice of dissent, not one political statement against the government. I mean, we have pulled together, and there's a kindness toward each other. Personally, how I feel now, I feel so validated in being here in Israel, having my feet on this ground. And you say, wow, are you crazy nut? But I feel like I am partaking in a very important part of Jewish history. I'm not on the perimeter with all the demonstrations happening in the United States, watching this like my friends who are worried themselves about being Jewish with all the anti-Semitism, but I am in the middle of this, this is what they say, I call a second war for our independence. This is the life and death struggle of Israel for the future of Israel, and I'm here. So I feel a lot of gratitude, as crazy as it sounds. I just came out of my bomb shelter about 20 minutes ago. I'm not scared. I just went in there. I have a checklist. I came in with my dog, closed the door, and now I'm here on this webinar. But I tell you, it's an honor and privilege to be in Israel right now.
Thank you, Lucy. Thanks so much. Shachar, you're up.
Thank you, Rafi, for inviting me. And again, I want to reiterate what you said by commending everybody for joining this webinar. The best of Am Yisrael is shining right now. I want to reiterate something that Dan just said, that there's this culture of chesed, a tremendous amount of gemilut chasadim, acts of kindness going on throughout Am Yisrael as a whole, the world over, but specifically here in Eretz Yisrael, nobody, and I feel this personally, and I keep telling everybody, nobody is on the sidelines, whether they're on the front lines literally or on the front lines in some other way. Everybody is on a front line and helping, and nobody is sitting and just saying, well, just let it be. Everybody's doing something to help. I made Aliyah in March of 2022 with my wife and my son, and we moved to the Gush Etzion region in Efrat, in the town of Efrat, and it's been amazing. It's been really incredible, and we'll talk a little bit more, I guess, later about our Aliyah experience. But right now, during the war, just day to day, I have the ability to work from home, which is amazing. A lot of my coworkers are in similar situations in which their children are in school for part of the day, and maybe they're not in school, or they're in school for a whole day. And like you don't realize, like when you're here, like during this particular tekufa, this particular time, a lot of the day to day kind of like gets a little mibulbal. It's like just things that you don't expect when you come from the States, for example. Just like your day to day gets interrupted, like transportation and the construction and school and things like that. Because why? Everybody's on the front lines. The teachers are in Miluim. The workers are in Miluim, and everybody's involved. And it's so inspiring to be part of this nation that is shining brighter than ever. And I don't think that the other side, those who are attacking us, thought that this would happen, especially as Lucy said, in the past year, there's been a tremendous amount of demonstrations and things like that. So it's really, really incredible to see the nation come together. And I'll just say one more thing, personally speaking, like being involved in so many different local initiatives here to help our chayalim, our soldiers. We go out to a base, for example, and we think that we're giving our soldiers chizuk. We think that we're giving them strength, but they give us that strength. They are so prepared, they're so ready, and they're so grateful. But we go out, we think that we're going to give them, make them happy and give them strength and all this stuff, and then they just return it tenfold, and it's unbelievable. So it's a really, really incredible privilege and zechut to live here in Eretz Yisrael, especially during this time, and be part of the nation during this period.
Wonderful, thank you, Shahar. All right, Tamar, you're up.
Thank you very, very much. Obviously, everybody explained already so eloquently so much of what we're seeing here on a day-to-day basis, and I think you're right. It's the strength that those actions and that participation has really given to us. We made Aliyah just over a year ago. My husband and I, with 4 children from the age of 6 to 16, and we made the decision to come from London after kind of some worrying anti-Semitic things that our kids were experiencing and that we were noticing as a trend. And we said to each other then, life is going to be hard wherever we go, but we want to be in a country where if chas v'shalom something is happening, that somebody will run to the aid of my children and not run away, which is an experience we had in England. And like Lucy said, I feel more validated now than I ever did that we made the right decision. I know that my children, although this is a scary time for them, they feel like the community is surrounding and embracing them. They're also, being encouraged to get involved in their own ways. And there is so much strength in that. Of course, it's scary, nobody wants to have their children experience the things that they're having to experience now. But honestly speaking, I'm very scared for what I see coming from my friends in England. I'm urging them to come and join groups like this so that they can be in a safer place, surrounded by people who will, do what they can to hold each other up during really challenging times. So,
thank you, Tamar. Thank you, everyone. I think very inspiring words, and I appreciate it. Okay, now the question really, the topic of why we're doing this webinar now, and why do we feel that this topic is so important. And I think there's really 2 sides of the coin here. And I think the one which is the obvious one is the rise of anti-Semitism. And I really don't want to focus on that negative side of it, because I feel that you should be making Aliyah for the right reasons, the inspiring reasons that everyone spoke about. But I think for the first time for a lot of people around the world, they're suddenly catching themselves and saying, wait a second, anti-Semitism is no longer just relegated to a little town in the middle of nowhere or to, a small number of people. This is something that is universal. It's something that we're experiencing in capitals around the world, in major cities around the world, in universities around the world. And this is something that I think we all recognize is not just going to go away. This is not just a fad that's going to disappear. And so for many people who have maybe in the past said, you know what, we'll wait a few years until we retire, or we'll wait until our kids have graduated and then we'll come to Israel. Now they're thinking, well, maybe we should come sooner than later. And I think that's something that a lot of people, it's impacting a lot of people's thought process and a lot of people's decisions. But as I mentioned, there's the other side of the coin, the positive, inspiring thing. And everyone just spoke about how the people have come together and how we're focusing on helping each other. And I think the other thing, which is much more practical, is that it's a lot easier these days to make Aliyah than it was just a few years ago. And there are a few reasons and a few ways where we see this. So the first thing is working remotely. And a few of you mentioned that you work remotely. And I think this is one of the huge benefits of the COVID period, where a lot of companies now allow their employees to work remotely. So in the past, if you couldn't work remotely, you'd have to quit your job, probably stop your career, restart your career here in Israel. And for a lot of people, that's not something that they want to do. But these days, if you can work remotely, then you don't have to worry about that. And in addition to that, there's very often a very big financial benefit to being able to keep your job and working in Israel, but still getting your salary that you got before you made Aliyah. So, the ability to work remotely is a big factor, and it's making Aliyah a realistic opportunity and option for a lot of people, where in the past it just wasn't. The other change is the opportunities and options that children who are older now have. So if you go back 4 or 5 years when we started this, so a few years before that, the general advice that we gave people is if you have children who are older than 10, then maybe you should think twice about coming to Israel, maybe wait until they have graduated and then come. That's no longer the case. Now there's so many more schools, so many more programs, so much more support for children who are 15, 16, 17, 18 that can come to Israel. They can easily connect and have a social group of friends and still do well in school, well enough to graduate. And so this now has made it a lot easier for families who have older children to make Aliyah. The other big factor is healthcare, and this is, for people who are older or people that have medical conditions. And as we saw during COVID, Israel's in the forefront of healthcare, and I think people that are thinking about making Aliyah, that was one of the reasons why they did it in the past, because they said, I'm not sure if I can get the right care or the right medication or to find the right specialist. And I think a lot of people realize that now you can, and there are just amazing programs here, and there's a lot of doctors and clinics and medical centers where they speak multiple languages. And on top of that, there's also a financial benefit here, because healthcare is socialized medicine in Israel. The cost of getting this care is usually a fraction of what you have to pay in the US and UK and other countries. And so people who in the past were hesitant to make Aliyah because of healthcare and having to deal with healthcare, now they realize that it's not as big of a concern, not as big of an issue, and they're coming here and getting the care that they want and the care that they need. And the last point is that in the past, and going back maybe a little further back, 10 years or so, when you made Aliyah, it's almost like you were getting a one-way ticket. You made Aliyah, you ended up in Israel, you said goodbye to everybody, you said goodbye to your job, goodbye to your friends and family, and that was you severed ties. Now, a lot of people, and this is also, I think, to some extent because of the impact Corona had on the way, people's ability to go back and forth. But I think what we saw is that, and what we're seeing now is that a lot of people will make Aliyah, but they don't sell their home, they don't sell the business, they don't quit their job, and they go back and forth. And just as a good example, my mother lives in New Jersey, and she comes to Israel twice a year. She comes around September for 3 months, then she goes back to New Jersey, and then she comes back for Passover in March, April. And so this way she has the best of both worlds. And so I think a lot of people who in the past said, I don't want to make Aliyah because I don't want to miss out on my children's birthdays and the weddings and all the happy occasions, or I don't want to quit my job, now realize that they can have the best of both worlds. They can come, they can make Aliyah, they can be part of the experience that everyone's talked about, and they can go back and forth, and they can travel, and they can see the world, and it really gives you an opportunity to do both. Okay, now we'll hand it back to our Olim, and Tamara, we'll start with you this time. If you can talk for a few minutes about your Aliyah experience and just share some tips that you have for people who may be thinking about making Aliyah.
Of course. So as I said, we made Aliyah, my husband and myself, just over a year ago from London with our 4 children. They were at the time 5, 11, 13, and 15, and we moved to Buchman in Modi'in. And we were very fortunate to have the help of Olim advisors when we arrived. And in a minute, I'll get to why that help was really so crucial for us. But I did, just kind of thinking in advance of this evening, jot down some thoughts about things that kind of worked for us. And of course, Aliyah is a very unique package for everybody, but kind of what worked for us was kind of thinking about what our red lines were in advance. What were we willing to be flexible on, and what was really set for us? So for us, we felt very strongly about the type of community we wanted to come to. Coming with older kids, we did, like Rafi mentioned, we got a lot of people saying to us, I think your kids are too old, you should reconsider. And so we thought very carefully about making sure we were in a community where they had a bit of a soft landing, and Buchman certainly was a very soft landing from that perspective. It's very, very full of Anglos. Our kids were able to make friends in English very, very, very quickly. But then that meant on the flip side that when we looked at things like work, we were a little bit less stringent on how long the commute would be. So kind of think about what you're strong on and what you then have room to kind of wiggle around so that you can make sure you get the best out of what you decide to go for. I guess my second tip would be to say it's never too early in your process to start to network. Reach out to people. The best support we've got were the connections that we've made. Posting on Facebook, we're thinking about moving to the community. Can anybody, recommend a school, or does anybody have kids this age? Our kids were able already to have Zooms with kids their ages, even staff in their schools before they arrived, just because we took the time to reach out on Facebook. And kind of coming with that is don't be shy about accepting help. People, kind of throw that comment at the end, don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. And we've experienced that really people, for the most part, really mean it. And they're very, very happy to offer their help and their advice, whether or not that means they're, on the first night you arrive, are willing to drop off 6 mattresses so you have something to sleep on that night. People are so willing, having gone through their own Aliyah experiences, to make sure that other people, have soft landings. So, don't be proud. You don't get an award at the end for doing it all on your own, and really do reach out to the people that you can create around you. We went, like I said, with teenagers. And so we found that being really honest with our kids was very, very helpful. We had really open conversation with them about what we were doing, why we were thinking of doing it, and really what the challenges they would face might be, because we really didn't want them to feel like we lulled them into a false sense of security. Making Aliyah is hard for adults and it's hard for kids. And that was a decision that we made. We decided to come here to Israel. We did it, with the best intentions for our children, but they were dragged along for the most part. And so we felt it was really important that they understood why we were doing this, and that, yes, there were times that they might find, struggle over that time, but that we were going through it together. And I guess my very last piece of advice would be as organized as you possibly can. Photocopy everything 10 million times. If they say you need 3 photocopies, photocopy it 5 times. Have everything you need and have it organized even before you come, so that you know, when you're here and you're in a daze in that first few weeks, and you're trying to get, you know, with the help of the Olim advisors, to all of these appointments, that you will have everything that you need ready. And just kind of to finish personally, we very shortly after we landed here found ourselves in the middle of a medical drama. And, you know, one of the first few phone calls we made were to Laura from Olim Advisors, literally with our hands in the air, to say, we don't know anything about how we're supposed to navigate the hospitals and the medical world and all the new vocabulary that comes along with those things. And, you know, Olim Advisors really went above and beyond the, you know, the bureaucracy that we in our heads were thinking, this is why we need their help. We need them to help us with this side of things. And actually, they really helped us to get through that time. And because of that, you know, a big part of that is part of our success now. And we are extremely happy. So if anybody is, you know, considering Modi'in or Buchman and wants any other advice, I hope Rafi will share our details, and you can, you know, reach out and start to network, and we'll help you on your way. Thank you.
Tamara. Thank you so much. All right, Shachar.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I made Aliyah in March of 2022 with my wife and my son, and we're here in Gush Etzion, in Efrat specifically. Just before we get to our community, I do just want to say that Olim Advisors was a tremendous help to us. When we came, we made Aliyah towards, I guess, what was the end of the COVID era here in Israel, like towards the end. But there were a lot of ups and downs and questions of when our lift would arrive, and we were fortunate enough to actually receive our lift 4 days after we came, which I think is really an anomaly. It was not planned that way. We thought we were going to get it like a month later. So that was wonderful. But what was extremely helpful from Olim Advisors was getting all of our appointments for like Misrad Pnim and all the other offices that you need to go to get your IDs and things like that. Everything was set up like within, I think, a month, maybe 6 weeks max. This is something that, especially during the COVID period, it was very difficult to get appointments. And for us, it just made our lives so much smoother and so much easier. And we were so grateful. So grateful. Even if we had to drive an hour to go to the Misran Pnim, wherever it was, like it didn't matter, right? I remember, just like it was great. So really that was and that was really tremendous. And there were other things that Olim Advisors helped us with as well, and before we made Aliyah and after as well. But going to just my Aliyah experience and maybe some advice and tips that I could share. So my wife and I had a checklist of what we were looking for in a community. Community is very important to us, and so coming to Israel, we wanted to find a place that really worked for us from the get-go. And you know, we expected to find that, and thank God we did. So the community that we live in, I'm so grateful beyond words, and I really cannot imagine living anywhere else in any other community in Israel. So if anybody wants to talk about, reach out and talk about our community with me personally, we totally open it to that. But echoing off of what Tamar said about the Olim network, leverage the Olim network as much as you can. Not because it's the thing to do, but also because people, as she said, people just want to help. Every single Oleh or Olah has gone through what you're going to go through, please God. They've gone through it all, whether it's jobs, looking for schools, figuring out the lingo, how to speak Hebrew, how to make appointments, how to buy a car, all these things, how to buy a house, find an apartment, right? All these things everyone's gone through, and they want to genuinely help. I know for myself, it took several months for me to find employment. But I was networking like crazy, and people were totally open to meeting me in person and on Zoom and just speaking with me, and it was amazing. And I was so touched, and I look forward to reciprocating that, and I have in certain ways as well. I guess if I were to share a piece of advice, expectations. Everybody has expectations as to what they're hoping for, what they're looking for when they make Aliyah, whether it's in community or job or you name it, right? I'd say to set expectations, make a plan, but perhaps expect things to go a little bit slower than usual, right? Not just because that's, you know, because the things take longer here. It's just, I would just expect it in general. Things may not go a certain way that you had hoped and things like that. So just setting your expectations to say, like, you know, I think I'm gonna get a job, after a month, or I'm gonna find a car after 2 weeks or something like that. It takes time, and also just to get adjusted, to get adjusted to your community, to your surroundings, to the language, to the signs on the road, everything. So there's that. Overall, living in Israel is incredible, and me and my family were just so grateful to have the privilege, like I said before, and the zechut of living here in Eretz Yisrael, to be part of this incredible nation. And we really, really appreciate the help that we got from Olim advisors, because it just made our Aliyah experience so much smoother. So again, I'm more than happy to speak with anybody who wants to reach out after, and wishing all of you guys so much success and bracha as you go on this journey.
Thank you, Shachar. Thank you so much. Lucy, you're up.
Okay, well, I think I'm in a different category than all of you. I'm older, I'm retired, and I came here alone, just with a dog. So I didn't have the challenges of finding schools for my kids or finding a job. I just had to worry about myself. And I just wanted to tell you, I was a manager of a very large pharmacy, and I'm a very prepared person, very organized. I had flow charts and everything. And believe me, when I came here, you could not be prepared enough. Every crazy thing happened to me. And if it wasn't Olim advisors, I mean, they got my appointments, and I was, even after my contract ended, I called up Lara, that's the sister and founder of Olim. I could not get my car out of the port of Ashkelon for 5 weeks, even though it was fully paid for, because they found some little error on paperwork, which they really couldn't tell me. So I was very much helped by Olim advisors. They went beyond the limit of my contract to help me out. True friends. So I had these bureaucratic hassles, which, I said, why am I here? And now I'll tell you the great things that happened to me in Israel. I made a tremendous amount of friends here. And I would say 7 of them are very close friends. I never was able to make that many friends in so short a time in the United States. It's like we all found each other, we glued together. The sense of community here is so great. That's one thing. Also, I found a great set of doctors. They're better than my doctors in the United States. They came with a lot of experience. They helped me. I had no medical issues, but I was very worried about getting established with ophthalmologist and family doctor. The healthcare system is wonderful here. Very, very good. So those are the 2 things. But I would say, if it's not Olim advisors, get another group that helps you get the appointments. I mean, it took me maybe 4 or 5 months to get my permanent Tildat Zahut, my Darcon, my driver's license, and I'm a person without patience. So you have to get an organization. It's not Olim advisors. But I am so happy I'm here now after a rocky beginning. I was saying to myself, I'm being tested by how to see how tough I am. And maybe by this war, I'm tested, but the war is not as bad as trying to get an appointment.
Well, Lucy, you definitely passed all the tests with flying colors. And I'm a little embarrassed here as you share the nice words for Olim advisors. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure for me and for my sister Laura and our entire team to help you. And Dan, I'll hand it over to you now.
Hey everybody. So as we wrap up our portion and look forward to hearing from you, your questions, I have the benefit of having now we're in our 7th year here in Israel. So thinking back on the Aliyah experience and the feelings and emotions we had, thinking about moving, making the decision to make Aliyah, and then spending our first years here, what I would say is a couple of things. One is there's an amazing book called Is Resilience, where you combine the word Israel and resilience. And it's stories of Israelis who are experiencing unbelievable resilience and have thrived. And what I would say is the experience of my children, the experience of my wife, the experience of my dogs, everybody has been resilient. There's nothing this country has thrown at us that we haven't figured out how to handle, sometimes with great ease and other times with great challenge. But we've managed, this is a country of resiliency. It's an expectation of resiliency. And I think we've all grown out of our comfort zone through that process. I think the second thing I would encourage you to think about is your Aliyah is going to be one of two things. It's either going to be successful or it's going to be fabulously successful. That's it. So a successful Aliyah is where, you know, it kind of goes the way you hope it goes. You find the community that works, you find the schools that work, you find the landing spot that works. But what I would say is fabulous success is all the serendipity that happens once you're here. You know, I'm in communications, right? So I make TV ads, I make internet ads. Well, you got to figure my phone's been blowing up the last 6 weeks of people I know from this ministry or that place, or just the guy down the street. He's like, let's make an ad and tell the world how great Israel is. And because everybody in this country is 2 degrees, 3 degrees of separation, you know, the most amazing things occur in this country that take your Aliyah from being successful, which is what you envisioned, to something much bigger, to something extraordinary that you could never even imagine. And then I think at the very sort of micro level, I think a lot of that feedback has already been presented to you. So Aliyah success means being thoughtful about your resources, whether it's your money or your time. It means being planful about those things. And then it means having a lot of flexibility about them as well. So with that, I'll stop and turn it back to Rafi.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much. Thank you to all of you. Okay, moving on to the last topic here. So things that you should be doing if you're thinking about making Aliyah in the next 1 to 2 years. And the whole idea here is, as you think about it, as you do the research, as you talk about it, there's some practical things that you should do that will, in essence, shortcut the process if you decide to make Aliyah in the future. The first thing is finding out which documents you need to provide. Either if you live in North America, then reach out to Nefesh B'Nefesh. If you live in other countries, reach out to the Jewish Agency. And just get the list of documents that you need to gather and you need to provide. There are quite a few documents that they require, from your birth certificate to a letter from the rabbi to, if you married, a marriage certificate. So, and some of those documents need to be apostilled, and all this just takes time. And so, as a few, I think Lucy mentioned, a few of the people mentioned, you want to be organized and you want to be proactive. And so, even if you're just thinking about it, even if you haven't decided yet you want to make Aliyah, go ahead and contact organizations, let them know that you're thinking about it, and find out what you need to do so you can start working on it. The next thing that you want to do is you really want to think about the lifestyle that you want to lead when you make Aliyah. And this is really an opportunity for you to start a new chapter in your life. And so what is that chapter going to look like? Are you going to maybe retire? If you've always wanted to live by the beach, now's your chance to do that. Maybe you want to do downsize and live in a city. Maybe you want to live out, in nature. Think about, what are you going to do for a living? Are you going to continue your career, or maybe reinvent yourself and do something that you've always wanted to do? And so that lifestyle, and it doesn't mean that it will exactly happen that way, but I think it could be very different from your lifestyle now, or it could be very similar. But I think it's really important at this stage of the game, at the early stages, to think about your lifestyle, think about the lifestyle that you want your kids to have. And then that kind of becomes the framework for your plans. And so that's a really important thing that you spend a fair amount of time and effort thinking about now. The next thing is putting together a budget, and there's a link that Nefesh B'Nefesh, or a budget, the sample budget that they put together. So if you want a link to this page, just email me and I'll send out the link. And it's just a sample budget, gives you a range of what costs are in Israel. And I think that's really important, because you don't want to come to Israel and not be financially secure, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be wealthy, rich, and you can retire, but you want to have an accurate sense of how much it costs to live in Israel and how much the salaries are. And like we talked about before, if you can put together a rough budget of what your costs will be, that will also impact your decision on where you want to work and who you want to work for. And so that's something that you should put together sooner than later. The other thing, as was mentioned earlier, is starting to do the legwork for finding a job. Now, most companies are not going to hire you until you're here, but that doesn't mean that you can't start doing the research, finding out what industries are strong in Israel, what industries and opportunities exist. This is the startup nation, and they're new companies, they're large companies, they're high-tech companies. There's so many different opportunities, so many different industries that you can get involved with. And so I definitely would recommend that you start doing the legwork, start networking with people. Either you do it online, or if you're planning on coming to Israel for a vacation, for a visit, meet people in person. But I think those connections that you can make early on will help you make this big decision, as it pertains to your job. The next thing is thinking about your home and your car, specifically your home. If you own a home and you want to sell it, then that's something that you have to plan ahead. In a lot of countries, the spring season is when a lot of homes go for sale, and so this could impact the timing of your Aliyah. It could also impact your decision as to whether or not you want to do some home improvements. And so it's a pretty big decision that you want to think about. Again, you don't have to necessarily start doing things, but if you say, you know what, we want to sell our home before we make Aliyah, then this is something that you have to plan for. And then when you look at the Israeli side of real estate, if you're thinking about buying a home, then start doing some research, getting a sense of what homes cost here. I think a lot of people are surprised by how expensive homes can be in Israel. And so this has a big implication on a number of factors. You might decide that you're going to sell your home, or maybe you're going to, rent out your home and rent in Israel. And so there's a number of implications here, a number of factors that go into play. And so it's something that you want to start thinking about and talking to people and doing some research. And then the last thing is, reach out to me, reach out to our team. Even if you aren't set on making Aliyah, maybe this is the first time you've thought about it. Maybe you're not making Aliyah for another 3 to 5 years. Maybe the chance of you making Aliyah is very slim. Talk to us. We're more than happy to talk to you, to listen to you, to give you advice, to give you some guidance. If you become a client of ours, amazing. But if you don't, that's fine too. At the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, our goal is to get as many people to Israel, and not just get people to here, but also help them adjust and help them lead a very happy and fulfilling life. So reach out to us, and if we can help you, we'll be glad to do so. So lastly, I just wanted to mention a few different resources, and this kind of just ties into what I just said. There's a number of resources from our Facebook group and our WhatsApp group and different guides that we've created. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. You can call me, WhatsApp me, email me. Let me know if you want to schedule a call. Let me know. We'll also have some of our advisors reach out to you over the next week to 2 weeks and try and connect with you and just get a sense of what your plans are and how how we can help you. And so I definitely want to encourage you to reach out, and I want to again commend you on thinking about making Aliyah, going through the process. And at this point, I want to head over to some of the questions, and we'll answer them. So give me 1 second here. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so I can see them. Okay. So I saw a question here about working legally remotely from Israel, and there are a lot of rules, and it depends on what the structure is. If you are you can work as an independent contractor. The company is willing to do that. A lot of companies allow for workers to work remotely. Some companies have to be registered here, so there are a lot of people that work remotely. There's a large percentage, and it really just depends on your specific company and specific role and specific situation. There are some additional costs that the company might have to incur, but these are things that companies very often are used to. And if you want to get into more detail, again, reach out to me and we can talk about it, because I did it. I worked for a company in California for about 3 years, and so I'm very familiar with that process, and I can definitely share some more information with you. Somebody had a question here about where do a lot of the Olim live. So, in terms of, if you think about the map of Israel, we have probably 7 or 8 of the Anglo hubs, the large cities. So you have Ra'anana, where Dan lives. You have Modi'in, where Tamar lives. Efrat is a large community where Shachar lives. Nahariya, where Lucy lives, is a growing community, and more people are moving there. And then you have Jerusalem and Tel Aviv are big ones, and so those, and Ramat Beit Shemesh, those are the big hubs, the big cities where a lot of the English speakers move to. But there are a lot of cities like Rehovot and Rishon LeZion and Haifa that have large English communities, English-speaking communities, and so when you start thinking about where you want to live, I would strongly encourage you to kind of open up your horizons and not just focus on those communities. As Tamar said, those are soft landings, and if you're coming with kids, and for certain people, it definitely is beneficial. But there's so many other options. There's new towns and new developments that are much smaller, and for some people, they don't want to just be a number in a large city. They want to be an active player in a smaller community. And so there's so many different communities, consider so many different options. And what I'd recommend that you do is make a list of your preferences, make a list of your priorities, and and then kind of try and find something that meets most of those preferences. And ideally you can find something that fits most of those. So definitely start with a wider list, and you can always narrow it down a bit. There's a question here about some of the forms, but I want to take it that you should bring. So maybe if one of you can just talk about some of the documents that I forget who, somebody mentioned, maybe Lucy, it was you, to bring copies and copies of documents. Can you just talk about some of the documents that you had to bring with you?
Well, of course, I had to bring my birth certificate, such a thing as a long form which lists your parents' name, and that I brought with me. Also, I had to get 2 letters from rabbis. But the thing, when I went, if you check with Nefesh B'Nefesh, there's about 10 different documents. But when I went through Aliyah, there was such a rush of Russian and Ukrainian immigrants. It was during the war and the COVID. They just said, let me see your birth certificate, you're in. Nobody was interested really, but you should prepare a file, about 10 documents. I think the things they look for is proof of Jewishness, because that's a problem. There's so many benefits when you come in there as a new Oleh Hadash. You get a Sal Klita package, which really amounts to about 6,000 American dollars. They want to make sure that nobody else, like from the Eastern European countries like Russia and Ukraine, jump on a bandwagon to get all the benefits as a new immigrant. So they're very careful to make sure that you're Jewish. You have to prove your Jewishness. So the letters from the rabbi, your birth certificate. I came in with my grandmother's ketubah, just to prove I'm authentic. And they started something, the FBI, by doing fingerprints, but nobody looked at that either. They really didn't look at anything. So Nefesh B'Nefesh is the best way to go. I say the biggest valuable thing is the birth certificate and the letter from the rabbi. That's what they wanted to see. That's about it. Once you come into the airport, it's just quick stamping.
Rafi, I think for us, what was really useful was Lucy, you're right. The list that Nefesh B'Nefesh, well, we don't have Nefesh B'Nefesh in the UK, but those of you who do, great, use the resources. They'll tell you kind of the official documentation that you need to show to the Jewish Agency in advance. But for us, the things that were really useful was making sure we had copies of all of our medical records, our kids' vaccinations, the things that kind of, nobody told us necessarily that it would be helpful to have. It was those kind of things. Even our kids' school reports, the schools here wanted to see, and trying to scrabble for them after we'd left school in the UK was a little bit harder. And we'd known that kind of thing. It would have been great to have those things. So anything, I think, information-wise, that is important to the running of your lives is going to be important, for you when you come. So, it can't hurt for you to have those things either accessible on your phone, even as PDF. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need everything on paper, but kind of bring those things. And also, I would say, having the benefit of being possibly, maybe, I don't know, Rafi, you can tell me if I'm wrong, the only Ola to turn up for the driving license thing without the physical driver's license that I needed. Because I had it on my phone, they allowed me, I don't know, by some miracle, to email it to the woman, and we still managed to leave. So take copies of your things on your phone, so that you can access them or send them quickly. Sometimes, Laura would say, oh, I can get you an appointment tomorrow. I need very quickly X, Y, and Z. And having them on my phone meant that we could just zap them across. So not just paper, but electronic things too.
Great, thank you. There's a couple questions here about finances. And so, yeah, obviously the cost of living for each person is very different based on how many people in the household and where they live and the lifestyle. But I want to break it down into two, and I'll just open up to you guys if you can just share your thoughts. One is the cost of actually making Aliyah. So that, that move over. Can you just ballpark how much approximately it cost you, if you feel comfortable sharing that with the audience? And then the other question is, just the monthly budget, just ballpark again, if you feel comfortable, just to give people an idea of what it costs to live in Israel. So I'll open up to you guys, and anyone who feels comfortable speaking, please go ahead.
I'll speak on that. I would say to go through all the documentation. My dog was the most expensive item to bring her across because of all the vaccinations, but from the United States, Nefesh B'Nefesh gave me a free one-way ticket, and just the paperwork and everything. It probably cost about $1,000. But you have to look at it very carefully if you are willing to go down several strata, several levels in your lifestyle. And I certainly was. So I came into Israel with my suitcase, a few clothes, and my dog. And I live way beneath what I lived in the United States. I'm much happier. So you got to look at that. What are you willing to accept as a lifestyle? Are you live more rurally, less furniture, less things? I was. So I live on a very simple budget here. I eat fruits and vegetables. I'm not having giant steaks every night and eating out, all that. So you just got to decide what you want. I live cheaper in Israel.
Great.
So that's the first thing, is what you want. How do you want to live? Do you want to live on a moshav, a kibbutz? If you live on a kibbutz, you're going to have a cheaper lifestyle. If you want to live in Tel Aviv, good luck. So that's the first consideration.
Thank you, Lucy. Anybody else?
I would just echo what Lucy said. First and foremost, the dog was the most expensive part of making Aliyah. The second is one of the most beautiful things about Israel, especially Renana, but I'm sure all the other towns, is there is zero keeping up with the Joneses. No one cares what you drive. No one cares what you wear. And if you're subject to that kind of peer pressure, subtly or overtly, it's just not happening here, right? The wealthiest people we know dress the same way as everybody else. So it really becomes a statement of personal choice. And that personal choice and what you want to spend manifests itself by where you choose to live, what you choose to eat, and at the end of the day, you're operating on a budget that's going to probably be very similar from where you came if you're working on a budget. So it's food, it's clothes. You don't pay for school in any kind of reasonable way. School's, literally nothing. Healthcare is literally nothing. So some of the big chunks out of your budget in America are just not in your budget here. So you have a choice to then say, am I going to reallocate that, or am I going to take that saving? Housing is expensive. I think some people have said it's cheaper to rent than it is to buy because of the scarcity of property, but the ability to rent cheaper. You'll have to figure out what makes sense for you. But I also would know people who came from 4,000 square foot houses in New Jersey who now live in 5-bedroom apartments with 3 kids, and they're so happy they can't even begin to tell you. So it's just going to come down to where you want to be and the lifestyle you want to live. I'll stop there and let Shachar jump in.
Sure. Again, I just to reiterate what other people are saying is, look, it really depends on your personal situation, how big your family is. We're currently a family of 3, so we have different expenses than a larger family, or somebody who's single, right? So, yeah, I mean, it just comes down to that. But also, I would just say, budget for what you can. Try to get as much information as you can up front, especially if you're renting. There are things, for example, like that maybe perhaps you wouldn't pay in America, like something called Arnona, which is municipality tax, and you're also going to be required to cover all of the utilities. So those are things that on top of the base rent, if you're renting, that you also have to bear in mind. I mean, you'll have those as well as if you're buying a house, but those are things to just bear in mind. And I'll say also, if you're not transferring your job right away, sorry, if you're not transferring your job and planning to get a new job right away, make sure that you have some savings for, you know, for that time period that you're going to be unemployed, just so you can prepare for that and plan for that, and for any surprises or hiccups there.
Right. On that note, I think if you talk to most financial planners, they'll tell you to have 6 months worth of savings in mind, you know, especially if you're switching jobs or looking for a job. And so I think that 6 month rule, you know, would apply in Israel as well. You know, and of course, what that amount per month really fluctuates, as everyone said, based on your lifestyle. But I would try and plan for 6 months of you know, of savings. And again, if you're coming over with a job, then you don't have to have that period. But I think it's good to account for example, buying a car. You know, most people do not bring a car over, and cars are expensive in Israel. So there are some big items. If you're going to, you know, if you're buying a home or if you're renting a place and you're not bringing your furniture, then there are going to be some of those initial costs up front. So it is good to plan for that. Tamara, was there anything else you wanted to add with financial stuff?
No, I wanted to say I'm the least helpful. So definitely you don't want advice from me. But if somebody does legitimately want to know more about the Bookman era, then I can do my research before I come on here and share made up numbers, because that's not my forte.
Okay. And then just a few other questions here. We'll just go through them. The question about Netanya, and does it have a lot of Anglos? Netanya does. It has. It used to be known more as a French city, but over the past 5 to 7 years, it's really blossomed. There's Area Meme, which is a relatively new area, and it has a tremendous vibe. It has a tremendous community there for families, for single people. You know, it's really a great community to look at. It has become more expensive, so that's something that you'll need to think about, but it's definitely something that appeals to a lot of Anglos. There's a question here about being Jewish and if you converted, and so the Jewish agency will review it, and they'll need to see proof of you being Jewish. And there's a number of things that the Jewish agency will require, letters from a rabbi and so on and so forth. So what I'd recommend that you do is reach out to either Nefesh B'Nefesh or the Jewish agency and find out exactly what documents you need and explain the situation, and they'll tell you what you need to provide, you know, as part of the interview. As far as I know, with the Jewish agency, there's a question about whether or not they're still processing applications. There was a Aliyah flight that came in last week. It was amazing. I think there were about 30 people that made Aliyah in the middle of the war, which is just mind-boggling. And so I know that they are processing applications, Nefesh B'Nefeshes as well. But you have to keep in mind that there's a lot of people that have been called up to army duty. And so everyone's working more on a skeleton staff, and things take a little longer. But you know, Aliyah hasn't stopped, and please God, it will just continue to pick up. Just scroll through here, see.
I just wanted to echo that if anybody's interested in talking about Ra'anana, happy to be a resource, and you can get my information from Rafi, and I assume the rest as well.
Great, thanks, Dan. There's a question here about establishing a bank account, opening up a bank account, and if you're looking to buy a home before you make Aliyah, then you should open up a non-resident bank account, and we can help you with that. If you're not, then there's really no reason to open up a bank account beforehand. And even if you do, when you make Aliyah, you're going to have to open up a second bank, an Israeli bank account. So my recommendation, unless you need to have a bank account before you make Aliyah, it's not something that you want to that you need to deal with right now. When it comes to private healthcare costs, it really depends on the coverage and what you need. And, you know, it's something that we can talk about offline. Somebody asks about the cost, but it really depends on the level. There's 4 HMOs, Kupat Cholim, in Israel. They all provide pretty much the same level of care. And then they have different levels of care that you can join by paying a few shekel out of pocket. So those are relatively inexpensive. If you want to go completely private, which a lot of people do, then of course there are additional costs that are associated with that, but it's something that won't break the bank. It's something that is definitely manageable. I know a lot of people who have done that. Lucy, there's a question here about living as a single lady in Israel. We've seen a lot of our clients as of late, and a lot of people now that are coming single. They really have heard about the amazing lifestyle in Israel for people who are either retired or thinking about it. And so maybe if you can just share for a couple of minutes, what your experience has been as a single person here living in the area.
Well, I don't dress up and go to parties. I mean, I live a very simple lifestyle. I think my biggest expense is my dog food. I mean, I really buy fruits and vegetables. I live a very, very simple life. So it's a very individualized question. I guess I have a car, but I'm not like driving all over the place. I work, before the war, I was working at a school for children, which was maybe 7 miles away a few times a week. Now I'm not, so I don't have that expense. I'm thinking of buying a bicycle now. That's not expensive. So it just depends. Like I'm saying, as an American living in, I don't know where this question's coming from. If I ask you as an American or a Canadian, what's your budget? You can't answer me. It's very individualized on what you are. And if you're upper middle class or working class, but I keep a very simple lifestyle. I never go out to eat. I don't go to movies. I don't do entertainment. I have a large circle of friends, and we do holidays together. We potluck on food. I hang out on the beach. I guess the biggest expense that I would have is I go back a few times a year to see my family. So you have to figure that. If you need to go back and forth in the United States, you're paying for plane fare. If you have a job, you're commuting back and forth, gas is more expensive here. So I don't work really. And I would say my budget is much less than it was in the United States because I don't have those needs anymore like I did.
Yeah.
Because it's very
And I
cheap.
think the person was also asking just about the lifestyle. And I know we had somebody who was working for us who lives in Netanya and is single. And I think in general, people that come here find that it's a lot easier to get around. You don't have the distances like you have in the US and Australia and Canada. So it's easy. Public transportation is very good for people. And I think people the weather's nice. So if you're coming from the Northeast or, the Midwest, you have a much nicer weather. And I think in general, people really see their lifestyle in Israel as a much more active lifestyle, much more opportunities to volunteer and to work and do things. And I think, that's something that really appeals to a lot of people. And we know just from the people that we've helped, a lot of people in the past would retire to Florida and California and Arizona, and now they're retiring to Israel. So it's
I would say
something.
as a retiree, it's cheaper in Israel. I would say that because I can walk anywhere I want. Also, if you want to have a cheaper lifestyle, you pick a city. I live in Nahariya, or you can live in Ashkelon. They're both border cities.
Right.
So my rent is much less. My arnona, which is a property tax, is less. And it depends on your lifestyle.
Right.
So that has a lot to do with it. But I do have a much simpler and more economical lifestyle here than in the United States.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, and we're kind of running out of time, so I just wanted to quickly get to a couple of the quick ones here. People ask about bringing cars over. It's just for a number of reasons. It's the cost of bringing a car over. It's having to get all the proper documentation. A lot of the cars in America are bigger cars, and gas is expensive in Israel, and parking, there's not a lot of parking. And so a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll sell their cars in the States, and then they'll buy a car that fits their needs and, is more conducive for Israel. So that's, and public transportation is very good. A lot of people take advantage of that. So those are a few points about bringing a car. If you continue working remotely in the US, you don't pay a double income. There's a tax treaty between Israel and the US. You might have to pay Social Security and self-employment tax here. And excuse me, and in the States, but a tax accountant could definitely help you, but you're not paying income tax twice in most cases. And I think those are the most questions. So with that, I'd like to again thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for the speakers who have joined and shared their thoughts and insights and inspiration. And like I said at the beginning, I really want to commend you on not letting what's going on in Israel stop you from thinking about making Aliyah, planning Aliyah. You know, please God, this will come to an end sooner than later, and then we will be able to return to a very peaceful, very happy, very fulfilling life. And again, if you have any questions, if there's anything that we can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So have a great week, a safe week, everyone. Be well, and we'll be in touch with you soon. Take care.